Loneliness is a word that carries a silent weight, almost like a shadow that accompanies us even when we're surrounded by people. It doesn't arrive announcing its presence, it doesn't knock on the door, it simply settles into our days and makes us question what once seemed certain. How many times have you felt like you were in a crowded place and yet seemed invisible? This feeling of being alone, even in the company of others, is a mystery that most prefer to avoid, but which Carl Jung saw as a powerful opportunity for self-discovery. It's not just about being cut off from the outside world, but about perceiving what the heart tries to reveal when the outside noise falls silent. There's something profoundly human in facing the void and realizing that, in truth, it's not absence, but a fertile space for discovery. Jung believed that solitude is not a punishment, but an invitation. And when we stop to reflect, we realize that it has a special way of revealing what we hide, even from ourselves. Many people view loneliness as something negative, associating it with sadness, rejection, or abandonment. But according to Jung, there's a deeper dimension to this state. He said that loneliness doesn't arise because we're without company, but because we're often surrounded by people who can't understand who we truly are. It's in this contrast between the need for connection and the lack of understanding that true feelings of isolation arise. Think about how many times you've tried to share something intimate and profound, but felt like no one truly understood. It's at this point that loneliness manifests itself, not to punish us, but to push us toward our most authentic selves. When it arrives, it's like a compass pointing inward, showing that there's still territory within ourselves that needs to be explored. This perspective completely changes the way we approach the subject. Instead of running away from loneliness, Jung invites us to look at it courageously, as if looking into a mirror. The initial discomfort is inevitable because it requires removing social masks and confronting the truths we prefer to ignore. But it is in this process that we begin to understand ourselves deeply. Solitude teaches us about the desires we suppress, the pains that have not healed, and the dreams we keep hidden out of fear. It's like a silent conversation that reveals secrets that could only be heard when the external noise subsides. Each solitary moment can become a portal to understanding that we are not incomplete. We simply need to reclaim forgotten parts of our own essence. When loneliness is understood through this lens, it ceases to be a burden and becomes a silent teacher. It teaches us to sustain our own presence, to not always depend on others' validation, and to see the value of being with ourselves. Jung believed that the path to individuation, the process of becoming who we truly are, passages through accepting this solitary journey. It's like a journey in which, before truly encountering the other, we must learn to encounter ourselves. If emptiness bothers us, perhaps it's because it's asking to be filled not with distractions, but with authenticity. Solitude doesn't demand haste, it doesn't demand immediate results, but invites us to dive inward, and this dive is precisely what can transform entire lives. If you're here, reading and reflecting along with me, it's because at some point loneliness has knocked on your door. And before we continue, I want to ask you something special. If this topic awakens deep feelings in you, if it's resonated with you so far, subscribe to the channel. Here, we seek to understand life in a more human, more intimate way, with stories and reflections we don't always find elsewhere. And what's more, leave a comment with your own take on your loneliness. Do you see it as pain, or have you managed to transform it into a learning experience? Sharing your perspective can not only ease the burden within you, but also help others who will identify with your words. This is a safe space for exchange, where every voice matters. Now, delving even deeper into Carl Jung's thinking, he said that solitude can be an internal laboratory. It is within it that we can experience versions of ourselves that we haven't yet shown to the world. By stepping away for a moment from the hustle and bustle of society, we have the chance to hear clearly the voices that come from within, those we often ignore in the name of rushing around, work, or the need to please others. Solitude, in this sense, is a call to listen to what the soul has been trying to tell you for a long time. Perhaps you'll discover that the anguish you feel doesn't stem from a lack of people, but from a lack of authenticity in the way you live. Jung believed that by accepting this invitation, solitude becomes a portal to true freedom, and this freedom isn't made of great external achievements, but of small, precious, internal insights. Imagine how much of yourself you haven't yet explored because you've never had the courage to stop and look within. Solitude, when embraced, opens space for this encounter. It is in it that talents that were dormant, desires that were stifled, and even wounds that need healing so we can move forward with greater ease are revealed. Therefore, Jung didn't see solitude as an enemy, but as an essential ally. He believed that only those who embrace this silent journey are able to approach what he calls individuation, which is nothing more than becoming whole, complete, and true. But here's the most challenging part. Most of us try to escape loneliness at any cost. We try to fill the void with superficial conversations, digital distractions, and commitments that don't nourish us. However, this escape only deepens the feeling of emptiness because deep down it doesn't address the essential question. Jung warned that instead of running away, we need to learn to sit with solitude, almost as if we were before a teacher. It's in this uncomfortable silence that the questions that truly matter arise. Who am I really? What am I seeking in this life? Why am I afraid of being alone? These questions don't appear amidst the crowd, but arise precisely in seclusion. Solitude, when viewed this way, is fertile ground where we plant the seeds of our own awakening. When we talk about loneliness, many people immediately associate it with pain, rejection, or failure. But Jung invites us to see it differently, as a process of soulful maturity. Loneliness is like that gap between one song and the next, a silence that seems uncomfortable at first, but prepares our ears to truly appreciate the next sound. Without this empty space, we can't appreciate what comes next. Think about how common it is to see people running away from this silence, filling themselves with commitments, superficial friendships, shallow relationships, all to avoid facing this moment with themselves. But the more we run from loneliness, the further we distance ourselves from what truly needs to be faced. Jung believed that running away from it is like running away from a mirror. We can even turn our face away, but the image will remain there, waiting for the moment we have the courage to look at it. This moment of facing ourselves can be painful, but it is profoundly liberating. Solitude teaches us to recognize the mask we wear to please the world, and to realize that behind it, there is someone much more authentic. It is in this pause that we can discern whether the paths we chose were truly ours, or merely responses to other people's expectations. How many times have you said yes to situations, people, or projects that didn't make sense to you just to avoid disappointing someone? Solitude removes the burden of the audience and places us before our own truth. It asks us, who are you when you don't have to prove anything to anyone? This is the essence of solitary learning. When there is no audience, when there is no applause, it is in this moment that we discover who we truly are. At the same time, loneliness can awaken an almost unbearable feeling of emptiness. But Jung explains that this emptiness isn't destructive. It's transformative. It's like a cleared field ready to receive new seeds. The problem is that often, when we feel this open space within us, we desperately rush to fill it with anything, people, distractions, quick achievements. But this artificial filling is never enough. It's like putting sand in a leaky cup. It never truly fills. Jung said that the void of loneliness can only be filled by ourselves, when we have the courage to dive into our own waters and find there the source of our strength. It's this dive that gives us consistency, that makes us more whole, capable of sustaining ourselves without constantly relying on external gaze. And there is another essential aspect. Solitude brings us closer to the sacred that dwells within us. When we withdraw, without noise, without distractions, we can hear an inner voice that has often been muffled. This voice is that of our intuition, our deepest wisdom, what Jung called the self, the true core of our being. This connection is only possible when we have the courage to endure silence and transform discomfort into listening. It is not easy, because silence can bring up painful memories, regrets, and feelings of inadequacy. But it is by facing all of this that the most important answers emerge. It is in this state that we realize we have never been completely alone, because within us there has always existed a presence capable of guiding us, our own essence. Furthermore, solitude teaches us something few value: the art of being present. When we're surrounded by people, we often live on autopilot, reacting to external stimuli, trying to live up to others' expectations. But when we're alone, time takes on a different rhythm. We begin to notice details that previously went unnoticed. The sound of the wind, our breathing, even our own thoughts. This attention to the present connects us with the true meaning of life. Jung said that in this process, solitude prepares us for truer relationships, because it teaches us first the most important relationship of all, the one we have with ourselves. Those who don't learn to be with themselves will never be able to truly be with others. However, it's important to differentiate loneliness from isolation. Isolation is an escape, a complete closure from the world, while solitude is a state of connection with oneself that opens space for more authentic connections with others. Jung reminds us not to confuse these two paths. Isolation can make us ill, but conscious solitude heals. When we use solitude as a tool for self-knowledge, it ceases to be a prison and becomes freedom. It empowers us to return to the world more fully, without having to lose ourselves in empty relationships or external expectations. Solitude teaches us to be with others without abandoning ourselves, and perhaps the greatest lesson of solitude is this: it shows us that we don't need a crowd to be complete. It reminds us that the true companionship we seek is not external, but internal. When we learn to be at peace in our own presence, all external relationships cease to be a necessity and become a choice. We begin to relate not out of need, but out of abundance. This changes everything. Jung asserted that only those who endure solitude are capable of true love, because they don't need the other to complete themselves, but choose them to share what is already whole. This is the transformative power of solitude. It teaches us to love without imprisoning, to be together without losing ourselves. So, the next time you feel loneliness approaching, remember that it didn't come to destroy you, but to reveal you. It's like a stern but extremely wise teacher, insisting on showing us what we try to hide. Running away from it is postponing an inevitable learning process. Accepting it is embarking on a path of inner freedom that no one can take away from you. Jung invites us to change our perspective. Instead of asking, "Why am I alone?" the transformative question is, "What is this loneliness trying to teach me?" The answer may be harsh, but it's also the beginning of your own individuation, the process of becoming who you were born to be. Loneliness can also be understood as a transitional stage, a necessary interval between what we were and what we are yet to become. Carl Jung asserted that every growth process inevitably involves moments of separation. It's like the caterpillar that needs to enclose itself in its cocoon before transforming into a butterfly. The cocoon from the outside appears to be nothing more than isolation, but inside is where the magic of transformation happens. The same is true for human beings. When we allow ourselves moments of solitude, we give our psyche the space to reorganize what is disordered and prepare the ground for the next leap in consciousness. If we try to skip this phase, if we escape loneliness at any cost, we miss the opportunity to emerge stronger and closer to who we truly are. In this silence imposed by solitude, we also find the opportunity to revisit our history. How many times have you stopped, alone, and recalled memorable moments you didn't even know were still stored in your memory? This recovery happens because by disconnecting from the external world, we can delve into depths we normally avoid. Jung said that within us lies a vast unconscious laden with symbols, archetypes, and experiences that shape the way we see life. But to access it, we first need the courage to face the silence. And it is precisely in this deep dive that valuable insights emerge. Perhaps you realize that certain choices weren't yours, but reflections of familiar patterns. Perhaps you understand that your current pain has much older roots. All of this only reveals itself when solitude opens the door. And what's more, solitude teaches us patience. We're accustomed to wanting quick answers, immediate solutions, but it shows us that some answers only come with time. This learning is precious in a fast-paced world where everything needs to be instantaneous. When we can wait, when we accept that silence is also an answer, we mature. Jung saw solitude as a process of gestation of the soul, and like all gestations, it requires time, care, and trust. There's no point in rushing. We must allow what is being formed within us space to emerge at the right time. This is one of the great gifts solitude gives us, the wisdom to trust the process. Another fundamental point is that solitude gives us clarity about what truly matters. When we're surrounded by noise, it's easy to get lost in distractions and superficial desires. But in silence, we begin to realize that many of the things we rush after aren't really that valuable. It's in this state that we can distinguish between what's essential and what's merely fleeting. This clarity shifts our priorities, changes how we spend our time and energy. Suddenly, we realize that what seemed urgent was just noise, and that the essential has always been there, waiting to be recognized. This is one of the most powerful forms of liberation, realizing that we can live with less, but in a much more authentic way. Ultimately, solitude prepares us for a genuine reconnection with others. When we learn to be with ourselves, when we stop fearing silence, we begin to seek relationships that truly make sense, not just fill a void. Jung believed that solitude is the foundation on which we build authentic bonds, because it teaches us not to use others as crutches, but to see them as partners on our journey. When two people who have learned from solitude find each other, a deeper bond is born, based on respect and freedom, not necessity. This is the beauty of what Jung called individuation, being whole alone, only then being able to truly give oneself to someone.